Hello, family. I hope everyone is doing well during this transition period. I wanted to jump on here and discuss something. I want to talk about stories. Now, if we look at stories in a way that we look at a mathematical equation, a story ultimately is a problem that we or that the writer is trying to solve. And so, what we do is we journey through that story, breaking down all the pieces and parts of it in order to solve this equation. At the end, what we get is the moral to the story. The moral is steeped in a principle or principles. The principle is ultimately what guides the story from beginning to end. Trying to solve that principle is what assists to create the details within that story. The principle is not a God. The principle is a guide. And the principle ultimately is a number, an integer. The same way when we solve an algebraic equation, we get equals such and such and such, which is a number. So the principles are integers, and the integers are numbers, and the numbers don't lie. So, with that being said, every story that has ever been written is a creation in itself. And every story that has been written or told is steeped in some sort of principle, moral. Now, with that being said, the reason why we have the ability to learn something from every story that we hear is because the story itself cannot escape the need to be steeped inside of a principle, which can be broken down in many different ways, in many different pieces, and in many different parts. The same way that you can always find the answer to a mathematical problem in multiple different ways. I hope we are really paying attention anymore to what the principles are trying to teach us. Because as I said, there are numbers, and each number has its own significant value and purpose. But trust, know, understand, and believe that every number, if it is zeroed out, meaning if you take that number, whatever that number is, and exponentialize that number to the 0 power, you're always going to get the number 1. So ultimately, what that means is every number, be it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 42, when zeroed out, equals the number 1, the guiding light, the principle of overall principles. And this principle is not a God. This principle was never trying to be a God. This principle is a guide. This principle wants only to serve and not to be served. It never required ruling over people. The angels have no desire to rule over, only to serve. And this is why when judgment comes, the angels that have been in service are exempt from that judgment because they never played God over those whom they were sent to help, sent to serve. I hope we are really paying attention in this season. For those of you that have listened to my stories or videos prior to this, you've heard me say that every story created, those authors are responsible for their stories. And it does not matter who they were, who they are, what their purpose and plan was for creating those stories. Whatever stories we create, because ultimately this is how all creation is born, by way of a story. It does not matter how the story was created. The author is always responsible for the beginning and the ending of the stories they create. Good, bad, right, or wrong. Once we understand this, there's a few of us that do. We know who we are when we recognize each other. He that has an ear to hear, let him hear. Those who are climbing the ladder to this type of understanding, continue to climb. You will get there eventually. And for those who are totally and completely lost, it's okay. You got to start somewhere. Just start with what you got and keep moving forward. But for those of us that understand this, we know that all the pre-recorded stories are being wrapped up. And we don't have to fight with the stories anymore. Who wrote it? When did they write it? What did it? What for? We don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater anymore, because it's a whole lot of stuff in that baby and in the bathwater if we just pay attention. So during this transition period between now and the 20th of this month, I hope everybody is really fine-tuning their spiritual eye, their spiritual ear. And for those of you that have reached the point of being able to pass the test, take your break. If you know what's up, you know what's up. You don't have to cram, okay? Because on test day, either you know it or you don't. It's just as simple. And for those of you that know, you know because you put the work in. For those of you that are still cramming, it's okay. Continue to study really hard. So, anyway, it's time to let the sun shine in, y'all. I don't know what kind of weather you've been having in your area, but one thing I could tell you where I'm at, the sun has only shined a couple of times within the last couple of weeks, and that's okay because the sun is supposed to shine today. Have a wonderful day. God bless you. God keep you. And we will see you next time.